Hey there YouTube, it's P2 Finger back with my second video talking about Roland and Boss guitar stuff in the 90s. Scott Summers, I called him. He was the product manager, a musician, a jazz guy who had went to California to go to music school, GIT or Berkeley. And when I got a hold of him, I told him I needed a Boss RPS 10, which was it would reverse audio in real time. It would convert digital audio from going forwards to backwards. This is an amazing thing to happen in real time. There is a delay. However long you're sampling it for will be the length of the delay. So when you pluck the sound, it'll go, and eventually it'll come out. So you have to play ahead of the measure. It's they have a device that does this where it sends your sound back to you, so when you try to speak, you can't. So imagine that mental effect where if this device blocks people from talking, it stops you from playing guitar too. Once you're realizing that it's coming back at you, you have to use the force. You have to shut the blast shields down, and there aren't many people who can do it gracefully. Adrian Belew has made an art out of it. There's another guy, Rob Fetters, who does really well, and then Reeves Gabrels. Now, in the previous video, there was a couple things that I got sidetracked. I wanted to address that. At the time in the 90s, the only way you could flip audio like that without using a tape, and people who bring up the tape thing and go, Hendrix did that way back, well, it's completely different, because with an RPS, it's flipping it in real time in the denomination of time you have it pre-programmed for, and it's doing it in little chunks as you play. If you flip the tape, you flip the whole solo, the last bit you played is the first bit. So it would be the equivalent of cutting up the tape into little sections and flipping each individual one of those is the way that the digital devices do it. So Bowie had this band Tin Machine, and his guitar player Reeves Gabrels was using all this same gear as well. And I was aware of this. I had heard this sound, and it really turned me on. Like, I didn't know what it was, and I wanted it. And I had purchased a ticket to see Adrian Belew perform on his Mr. Music Head tour. And I think the first song he played it's called Hot Zoo. It's about a trip to your local zoo in the summertime. And he's playing reverse guitar live. And he's well aware of the fact that he's doing this, and he's rejoicing on stage, like, yep. With this Strat, and this shit's coming, these notes are just, and it was magic. It was absolute magic. I had never seen anything remotely as incredible, and how cool it was for me to see that. So that lit a fire under me, and I had to find out what this was. I had to obtain one, and that, of course, eventually I'm attending Psycho Dots shows. My wife and I, we hunted Adrian down and went to his house in Williams Bay when he lived there. And he invited us. I introduced myself to him and got to know him for about 15 minutes, and then we got out of his hair. But in the meantime, I played Howard, his grand piano, I played his drum kit, and I played his dobro. He invited us to a Psycho Dots show, which the Psycho Dots is this band that Adrian asked to join, and they became the Bears. And the Bears did 4 albums, and they toured the world twice. The band broke up after their second album because the record company went under, and the band basically failed. And they came back because they weren't a failure. Just they didn't make it huge. And belew had other opportunities, like going back to play with Bowie and his solo career. So it didn't work out for that band, but they continued. And that guy in that band is named Rob Fetters, and he is an incredible talent. All those guys in that band, now we lost Chris last year. So all through the 90s, my wife and I we were not only seeing these Roland product demonstrations and seeing what Roland was coming out, we were buying tickets and seeing shows where these musicians were using this gear. Like, people hated David Bowie's band Tin Machine. I loved them. I could not stop listening to that stuff. So I had an affinity toward this stuff, and my wife ended up purchasing me a used GR50 guitar synth. And I got the Roland JC120. I bought a Stratocaster. Later on, a friend of mine that I met through the internet, who we got to know each other, he was buying Roland gear. I don't know if he was getting it on eBay cheap or what the deal was, but there was a time when Roland VG8s were really cheap, and you could find them for like $100 to $200. So he gifted me a VG8 and a VG88. And like, I know belew uses the VG99, which is basically the newer model of that. So I've used that technology, and I want to talk about that. I want to talk about the guitar synth aspect of it. Like, there's mystery behind these devices because they're not as common as the other stuff. They're rare, and they require this extra pickup, an extra cable, which didn't last as long as it could have. The cables would break if you used them. If you were hard on a Roland synth cable, if you used it live gigging, you would end up having to buy a new one, and they weren't guitar cables. They were 13 wires with this goofy connector that, like, if you stepped on it with a boot, you would just mash the connector. So that stuff, you know, it's like, it isn't as well known. And I had all of that stuff, and the guys that I played in bands with had it. So, and I still have it, and I still use it. So I'm going to be talking more about what I think is really the cream of the crop, and then what you shouldn't really waste your time with. My timer light's going off. So, and I'm surprised this is a 3-part series, but I kind of went off on a tangent, and there was some things in the first video I know I brought up, like, you know, let me shut this light off. The only way you could get a reverse delay at that time was to buy the Eventide 3000, which is like something Robert Fripp has. It's a double rack. It's a real tall rack unit. And he'll have a bunch of them. He'll have like 4 Eventides. Or is it Eventide? It's Eventide, right? So this unit, all the studio guys had them, and there was their delay and their chorus. They have a real distinctive sound. Like, basically, that's the 80s guitar sound. It's this, like, a lot of guys use an SPX, which was a SPX 90. It's a half rack Yamaha. They have these presets, but there's this specific chorus sound, and there's a specific reverb that's in that gear. Some guys used a Lasis. The guys that couldn't afford, you know, everyday guys were getting quadraverb, multiverb, studio verb, whatever Alesis. Some guys had Lexicon. You know, it's all slightly different flavors of the same thing, but it was, they talk about the 80s, they had these monster refrigerator racks. So that's all a real specific sound, and the Eventide, now they have the 99, and that's on everybody's pedal board. So you should kind of know how that evolved and what it is. But initially back then, if you called into a radio station and started cursing and swearing, they would dump you with the delay. So everything you were saying was going into a timer, a delay, and it would come out like they have an 11-second delay, 10-second delay, whatever it is. So then if you swear, the DJ hits a button and it dumps whatever was in that delay. So whatever you said doesn't make it out to the air. So in order to do that, you need to have a delay. That's the delayed signal when you set it 100% wet is a really high reference quality copy of that signal. You can't have, like we talk about like tape delays where it has character, where the repeat, the delayed signal, it's not clean, it's not crystal clear, and that's all they marketed in the 80s. All the guitar marketing was pristine digital delay. And then in the 90s, people figured out, you know what, it sounds cooler when the delay goes, hello, 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 or it gets more broken up, and see me scrunch my face up. Hey, at least I didn't comfortably numb you. And if you ever go to a Pink Floyd tribute and the lead singer says the word hello through the PA microphone 3 times, that's your cue to skedaddle, get out of there. The Eventide 3000 was the stock radio station delay, so they could dump you. And also really high-end, expensive studio gear. So we see how for a while in the 80s everyone was headed that way, and then when they achieved it, like they were like, no, that's not good. We want our delays to sound terrible again. So it's just one of these things where there's marketing hype and there's reality, and that's what I intend in the next video. We're going to go more into depth. This may be like 5 videos. I don't know until I get done saying everything I want to say. So the next video, I'm going to be talking specifically about the Roland VG, the modeling, the not a synth. We're going to talk about what's the difference between a guitar synth and then something like the VG series. What works, what doesn't work, because you can waste a lot of money and chase a lot of, throw a bunch of valuable time away if you trying to get good sounds out of some of this equipment. That it's just, there was a much better way around it. So that's what I want to talk about in the next video, you guys. Thanks for joining me on this one. More my obsession of Roland and Boss gear from the 90s, and coming down to brass tacks in video 3. I promise I'll get to the point.